Welcome back, one and all, to
Here we
another
are.
episode of the Two Tongues Show.
With a cool little video clip in the front.
And a little bit of chest here, a little bit of bonus.
Very manly.
A bonus episode.
Getting manly AF, as the youngins say. Drinking beers, having chest hair out.
Having chest
got
hair.
nicotine pouches in.
Hell yeah.
Dude, we're fucking going off this episode.
We're going to shoot compound bows in the forests of Utah.
I thought you were going to say we're going to like shoot heroin or something like that. I was like,
No.
whoa.
We're going to hunt bears with our...
We went off the rails real quick.
We're going to hunt wild pigs, predator style. We jump out of trees with a buck knife in our teeth.
Yeah, dude. That's it's always been like a fantasy of mine to like be up in a tree with like a knife and just drop down onto a deer. I was going to say, I know you're not supposed to say dirty words in the first few minutes of videos on the YouTubes.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
I don't know if you should talk about shooting heroin either. I don't know that maybe that's bad, but it's done now.
Yeah. I want you to know, let me get this mic over here. I want you to know that in the YouTube and the video stream right now, I can't say YouTube now because we're on Rumble as well. Check us out on Rumble, you guys.
Yeah, dude.
You're still taller than me because of the camera, and it makes me feel inadequate.
Yeah. You gotta sit up real straight.
Shit. All right.
Yeah,
what's up, man?
You know, just living the dream. Working.
9 to 5. My fucking head went right there.
How
dude.
can it not?
Golly.
How can it not? I don't work 9 to 5. I work different hours than that, but you know, what are you gonna do?
You say you might be getting a new job?
Yeah. But I don't know if we should talk about it.
Okay.
I don't know if it's public information.
Oh,
big things happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have big things happening.
Yeah. It's exciting. As soon as I know that I can share it, I will for sure. Just like, we'll just put it this way. There's a community online that, that we interact with a little bit, and I might be becoming more involved with that community.
That's super cool, man. I like that.
That's been the plan, you know. That's like part of why I've been wanting to start interacting with people online more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I had an experience with me and a couple of coworkers from a number of previous jobs where I worked, where we got together and hung out. And it was really interesting at my age to be hanging out with like new friends. I don't know if you call them new friends, but you know, they're not kids I grew up with. And like, you know, the only friends I really maintained relationships with as I got older were those ones that I knew when I was a kid. So like having like this like intimate guy time. That sounds weird. Intimate guy time.
Intimate guy time.
You know what I mean?
You stepped in it there, dude.
Yeah, there's someone's gonna clip that out.
I'm gonna clip it out.
Oh shit. Okay.
Speaking of clipping out, I uploaded a clip. I'm gonna try to be making more new clips. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe, ring the little ring-a-ding.
Ring the bell.
Because the shit's coming, you know?
Yep.
Stuff's coming.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome, man. The reason I brought all that up was to tie it back into the community's idea.
Yeah.
To be able to find those kind of intimate guy time, to be able to find relationships with people who are basically strangers that you don't have the benefit of like a shared history with. It's harder to do. It's hard. It's hard if you're a guy. First of all, it's hard when you're not young anymore.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're doing it in the way you're doing it is.
It helps. It makes it easier when you have an ideology and people share that ideology, you know, or at least like large portions of that ideology.
Yeah.
You know, like even people who are not maybe on the religious boat that I am, they still have, you know, like traditional, they value, you know, a traditional lifestyle and things like that. I have to be honest. I don't really understand why an atheist type person would be into traditional values. I don't get it. But I guess I do. I guess I do, because I used to be that person kind of. You want the order of society that brings, but you know, you're not willing to admit, you're not willing to like take that whole leap of faith, you know?
Sure.
But I don't know. That's, you know, aside from the point of what we're talking about, just like joining that kind of online community, it makes it easier when there's like a shared ethos.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little bit envious of that from you because I've struggled to find a community that aligns with my own ethos.
Yeah.
There's people out there, they're few and far between, but some of the ones that I've found that I think, oh shit, this guy or this fella,
dope.
Yeah, we got something in common. A lot of times I get totally rejected. Like, hey, do a little outreach. It's just like,
go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself. Yeah.
So actually that reminds me of something that I hipped you to earlier in the week. One thing that I've said to you is that a lot of your brand of spirituality, the like hippy dippy, psychedelic spirituality kind of thing, it lends itself to people who suck.
Yeah, I'm finding that.
They fucking suck.
Yeah.
And I hipped you to a guy named Julius Evola.
Yeah.
Who is into the same kind of mystic stuff.
Yeah.
But is super based.
Dude.
Super based.
I'm just getting into it.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do some Evola episodes.
We definitely should. I expect that there'll be at least 1 or 2 solo episodes out of that. What was the specific book that you sent me?
The first one that I sent you, well, the only one that I sent you is Revolt Against the Modern World.
Yeah.
Which just sounds awesome.
So I had to buy it. It wasn't free. You said it was free. It wasn't free. I had to buy it on.
It's free on Spotify.
When you sent it to me, I opened it up on Spotify. It's like, pay me $20.
Huh.
So I was like, fuck you. I went to Audible where I have credits, and I just bought it on Audible.
So I share my Spotify family plan with you. Are you still logged into that?
I don't think I ever did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't think I ever did.
You should do. I'll resend you a link. I thought you did, but anyways, he's got that book. He's got another book called, I think it's called Ride the Tiger.
Yeah, it is.
And then he's got another book, but I can't remember what it is.
He has one about Hermeticism.
The Hermetic tradition, I think is what it's called.
So I started listening to the audiobook, and it was like the foreword and the introduction. So I haven't really gotten into it, but the foreword was written by somebody else about Julius Evola, and it was some really interesting shit in there that I had never heard of the guy. I didn't know anything about him, but they said he was associated with like right-wing fascism. And when I'm talking about old school right-wing fascism, like the real deal stuff, not the stuff nowadays that passes for it. So yeah, but the fact that he's one of those guys and also a mystic, and the guy in the forward, I don't think he was clearly admires Julius Evola, but it didn't come across as super complimentary to me. I'm trying to think of specifically what it was. It was something about him being solipsistic and being like using his mysticism as a tool of social manipulation. He didn't really believe the stuff he was saying. So I'm interested to actually read it.
Yeah. So the one that I sent you on Spotify is not as professionally done, I'm sure, as one that you got off of Audible. And one thing about that is, if something has high production quality and it's like rubber stamped by, the establishment, we'll just say, it's going to have to put a little bit of distance between. You're not going to be able to just outright like him, And the one on Spotify that I sent you is it's not terribly done. It sounds good, but it's obviously not as professionally done. And I only made it through the intro. I haven't actually started any of it yet. But the person who does that intro is more, charitable towards Evola.
Gotcha.
And the first thing that struck me about that Evola thing, I'm going to read a little excerpt from it.
Yep.
It reminded me of a good friend of the show, Jason Myronchuk from the 2-Bit podcast. Jason has been blowing the whistle on a few kind of things. He's got a few different kind of plates spinning as far as ideas go. And one of them is The Vengeful Son. We had him on to talk about that.
Yep.
So Jason is kind of blowing the whistle on this shift in the zeitgeist, shift of the spirit of the age, transferring us from the devouring mother into the vengeful son is what he's calling it. And it seems to me from that intro that Evola was like the Jason Myronchuk of, whatever year he was.
Yeah.
Because he was blowing the whistle on the devouring mother. I'll just read this. This is not a quote from Evola. This is a quote from whoever wrote the intro. Catch my breath here. Since the chthonic or earth religions go hand in hand with mother cults and their feminine leadership, Evola saw every matriarchal culture as further evidence of deterioration. It was neither misogyny nor patriarchism, an intense for liberation, bondage. In his eyes, this liberation is all that matters. Everything else is meaningless alongside it. To achieve this goal, no sacrifice is too great for him. Even one's own death becomes a triumphal death, insofar as one is aware of it as a sacrifice undergone for this liberation. Who perishes in battle with this spirit is godly, because for him, the outer struggle is merely a symbol for the inner struggle against enslavement to the earth.
Yeah. So does that have to do with like a higher type of being? You know, is it like one of those like Gnostic sort of things? When he says chthonic and worldly, is he contrasting that to spiritual?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think there is a spiritual element to it, but that spiritual element is like almost like grounding people to the earth. You know, it's like you've got a spirit who's like saying, don't pay attention to the spiritual, you know, be very materialistic.
Yeah.
You know, and that's made me, you know, we've been deep in the age of the spirit of the devouring mother, and just think about how materialistic we have been throughout all of this. You know, the tyrannical father kind of ended around, you know, like 45, somewhere in there, like kind of right around the I would say it was entering its death throes in that era. Then it kind of like fully transitioned over to the devouring mother in like the 60s.
Yeah.
And just think about like, that's like the switch over point where it's like, we used to be a much more spiritual culture and we just became materialist, you know?
So the Second World War is like that big event that marks the transition from the tyrannical father, the period of the tyrannical father, to the period of the devouring mother. So you think that the era of the tyrannical father was more spiritual than the devouring mother?
I don't really know. I would suspect yes to some degree. I mean, if you think about pre-World War II, like society was much more Christian, much more
true.
You know, less science, less hard materialism, less where's the evidence, you know? So in that way, yeah, I think that it was.
Yeah. I wonder also, do you remember how we were talking about the Viking berserkers and this like pagan way of life where war was seen as some kind of a sacred ritual, you know, like some kind of participating in some sort of spiritual thing when you do war. If there's any connection between that and the Second World War, like the spirit that drove soldiers in the Second World War, then there may be some interesting overlap there too.
Yeah,
about it being spiritual.
And I mean, think about World War I and II. You know, you got these men going to battle to protect what is theirs, you know? And in some ways that's materialistic, you know?
What is theirs, yeah.
In some ways, what is theirs also is a state of mind, you know, a philosophy, an ethos, you know? And that's metaphysical. There's nothing physical about that.
Will you beer me, Kyle?
I'll beer you for
Thanks,
sure.
buddy.
We're drinking some delicious Hefeweizen. Nice German beer.
Yes, indeed.
You killed that one fast, man.
I did. I've been toying around with the idea of getting more disciplined. I did for a little while, and then I got away from it. And I do this thing where when I cut myself some slack at all when it comes to discipline,
rails.
I have this self-destructive tornado.
I'm the same way, dude.
And that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
That's you're like, damn, you finished that beer quick. It's like tornado day, buddy. It's tornado day.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of got the same instincts. You know, I've been doing keto, and the delicious beers are not fucking keto ever, you know?
True.
And this is a wheat beer, so it's especially not keto.
But these are the best.
It's so flavorful,
dude,
and delicious.
I'm so happy that you love Hefeweizens.
Yeah, it's my favorite, man.
Because I never got into beer really until I met my wife.
Yeah.
And then I found certain beers I liked and certain better than others. And Hefeweizens are by far my favorite. And my wife appreciates them, but she only drinks IPAs.
Oh man, not for me.
Dude, we were bowling yesterday.
Yeah.
And I picked up her beer on accident and I took a drink of it. And I had this weird moment where my lip curled up like bitter beer face.
Yeah,
my lip curled up, and it took
fucking
me
Elvis.
It took me to noticing my own reaction before I realized that the flavor wasn't what I expected. I noticed the reaction before it registered. Yeah. Fucking hate IPAs.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I hate them, but they are definitely not my favorite beer, and I think that they're super overrated. You know, it's like a hipster thing.
Absolutely, and they're taken over. It's like
hipster thing. Exactly.
There's way more IPAs than anything else.
Yeah,
and if you like IPAs,
more power to you.
Each their own. But yuck.
Yeah, I'm not inviting you to bring beer to my parties.
You're not allowed to come to my birthday party.
Exactly. All right, so we hit on. There's going to be some Evola in the future. Exciting times.
For sure. Hey, is the Evola guy at all related to the Gerard fella that Maren Schick brought up?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't know of any connection to them. There might be some, but I don't think so.
I believe there was some talk in there about like Evola being one of these characters. He's the one that tell me if this registers for you. He's the one that that evolution, that the theory of evolution was like key to his whole philosophy. He was saying like the world is always evolving, the spirit is always evolving, God is always evolving. So his whole mind frame was that that everything, like he makes that distinction between being and becoming. And he's like, the truth is everything is constantly changing. And he was described as being one of these people that is trying to merge or reconcile science to religion.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's maybe I'm misremembering.
Gerard is?
No,
Evola. Okay.
Evola.
Yeah, I don't know. I know, I knew who Evola was before I sent that to you.
Yeah.
It's not like I just stumbled upon him. I remember listening to an episode of Pete Quinones' podcast years ago, where he did an episode with Bird from Timeline Earth, and they talked about Evola.
Really?
And this is, I remember specifically what I was doing. I was loading up firewood at one of my old jobs. It's like I have a weird memory like that. I'll listen to an old podcast and I can remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, I might know a little bit more about Evola than you do, but not much,
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, and he's one of these guys that's trying to reconcile science and religion, those characters are always my favorite.
Yeah.
And I would put people like Nikola Tesla and Carl Jung and even Darwin and even more than Darwin, Wallace, the guy that he published Origin of Species with, because he became a spiritualist in his old age. And I think there's like two kinds of people like that. There's like apologists. They're the kinds of people that when the modern world becomes more modern and more scientific, they try to reinterpret religion to make sense, to make it cohesive with the modern world, like people like Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who, in the modern world, well established in that modern way of being, try to refit the old ideas into the modern paradigm. Mm-hmm. And I just fucking love it, man. I don't know, if they're right or wrong, but whenever I see someone trying to do that, I just love it.
Yeah.
I
when I was listening to that, so back when I listened to that Pete Quinones episode with Bird, it was kind of or like really going into like the psychedelics and stuff like that. It was like right at the beginning of that. So I wasn't really thinking in that frame. And honestly, I don't really know if that's the aspect of Evola that they were talking about. It's been, I don't really remember the content. Yeah. But when I listened to that intro, the first thing, like I said, that struck me was that thing that reminded me of Jason. Mm. And then like right after that, he said something that it was kind of like reminiscent of the as above, so below kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is like right up Chris's alley.
Yeah.
So that's when I sent it to you.
Yeah.
I don't really remember where I was going with that.
I don't know, man, but you know, one of the things we talk about is you being more of a creature of the internet, and me being like a weird
boomer.
Like a weird boomer that's too young to be a boomer.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that about myself, man. Like I'm like there are certain people that are early adopters of things.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I like to think of myself, as much as I would like to think of myself as someone who's brave in that way, I'm not, dude.
Yeah.
I am not.
You resist.
I'm not adopting technology early.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not adopting like changes in fashion or music early.
Mm-hmm.
I go kicking and screaming every single time.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I just feel like, you know, like I've always been 3 years or more behind you and Matthew when it comes to musical, you know. And it's like in retrospect, after I catch up, I'm like, dude, this is good.
Good shit.
But in its day, I was like,
not for me. No. Yeah, I get you, man. One thing that Matt Erickson and his co-host Cooper talk about a lot is like those generational divides. And there is a interesting similarity between boomers and millennials, which we are. You know, I frequently say that I'm the oldest millennial on the planet.
Yes, yes.
I don't think that's true, but I mean, you're a millennial and
you're
I'm
older than
me,
you. Yes,
so,
yeah. I'm the oldest millennial.
Yeah, I'm second.
Yeah.
There is like a weird commonality between boomers and millennials, and then Gen X and Gen Z have like this weird lineup of like questioning authority, you know, not taking anything at face value.
Yeah.
And millennials, and a lot of millennials and boomers are like not so much questioning authority, happy to kind of stick in the status quo.
Yeah.
There are like Matt Erickson, I think, considers himself a millennial who is more similar to Gen X. And I feel the same way, you know, like I've always been like authority, you know, like,
yeah.
Which is weird because in some ways now I like value authority very much, you know?
Yep. It's not interesting.
It just depends on the authority, you know, like if I respect if you give me reason to respect your authority, I'm happy to, but I'm not just going to like buy everything you spoon feed me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So one of the things that pops in my head is we may have talked about this last time is the idea of respect or respecting your elders as a particular example. That's something that was kind of ground into me as a kid. It's like, you know, respect your elders, and even if they're like rude to you or whatever, it's like they deserve to be treated with respect. And the Gen Z like divide maybe is along the lines that you just outlined. It's like, no, you have to earn my respect.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences of that are that though people in that group are going to, I don't know if this is an oversimplification, but disrespect as a default.
Yeah.
And only when you've earned respect but you see how that will reflect poorly on authority. It's going to reflect poorly on the people that came before you, because in the old days that we already understood subliminally that you earn respect. You've already earned that respect, and the new people don't believe that. So the lack of appreciation, respect for tradition is like, what has tradition done to earn my respect? You know?
So I think where I kind of try to come from now is my default is to give respect, you know, but if I start catching a whiff of you being full of shit, I'm like quick to revoke that respect, you know?
Yeah.
Not, you know, I try not to revoke like the common decency and things like that, but it's like, if you say a bunch of shit that's like obviously, you know, off base, then it's like, I don't understand why I need to take you seriously, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the slippery slope there is if somebody says something, let's say, like a moral difference of opinion between you and somebody else. Mm-hmm. Some example pops up and they take one side of it that you would never have taken. Yeah. Then you lose respect for them entirely, even though it was only this one moral issue that you had a problem with, you know?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I was kind of thinking that earlier. It's like when you talk about like Generation Z, the Zoomers, and their like lack of respect for authority, they're so young that what they're basing their respect on is like silly stuff a lot of the time. You know, it's like, okay, this person said something that you don't agree with, so you don't respect them anymore. But they've also been like taking care of you your entire life, providing for you your entire life, you know? So there's something to that for sure.
Oh yeah. There's a problem with not naivete that I've been, I've, you know, been the victim of myself. If I was a younger man, you know, an older man that's admirable to me, that's somebody who I look at and I'm like, oh man, I want to be like them. And maybe it's because they have a cool car and I'm a teenager, or maybe it's because they're what's that guy? Andrew
Tate.
Yeah. Maybe he's an Andrew Tate fella that's like really, you know, successful talking to girls or whatever. But you know what I mean? It's like
drives a Bugatti.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that is no reason to check the box that you've earned my respect and admiration. But when you're young and naive, you don't fucking know the difference.
Yeah. And like you know, your dad says one thing that is like cringe to you, and it's like, oh, fuck this guy, you know, but meanwhile, he's been paying for your food and your shelter. And, you know, that's like one thing that I have like come to understand about love over the years is like, love is not cuddles and pats on the head and, you know, things like that. Love is duty. Love is like, I go to work every day to feed your fucking ass, you know?
Yeah.
And even when you're a disrespectful little shithead, I put food on the table for you because I love you.
100%.
You know? And that is something that I think a lot of people grow into respecting, you know?
Yes.
It's like when you start doing it, you're like, oh man, I treated my dad like shit, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
I wonder if that can be taught. Do we have to come to that realization? Because it seems everyone I know, even multi-generationally, follows that pattern that you just described. You know, I have to be not just an adult, but pretty deep into my adulthood before I really appreciate what my parents did or, you know, who they are.
I do think it can be. I think, you know, the societal experiment that we've been living in has had like the knobs twisted and manipulated to make people not prone to respect authority. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's something to that. And I think if we can adjust, we can get that dialed back in. And I think, you know, big surprise for me, I think a big part of that is becoming more religious as a society because respect your mother and father.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Father
absolutely.
and mother, however you would say it.
Boy, that little pack of nicotine things.
It's buzzing.
Oh boy. So you brought up Jason Miranchuk earlier. He sent a message to me after I posted that, not to me, but, you know, commented on the video after I posted that Sarah from Rose episode.
Good old Friar Rose.
About the religion of the future.
Yeah. Just
saying if he's into it, if I wanted to have a deeper conversation about that,
oh yeah, man.
which I'm excited about. I think that'll be an interesting conversation. It's just a matter of scheduling it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, man. I would love anytime we can have Jason on. Always happy to do that. That guy's awesome. And you know, like I'm always like building Jason up, but he deserves it. Just like one of the most interesting dudes on the internet, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So always happy to have Jason on.
For sure.
Speaking of respecting authority and authority figures giving you reason to not respect them.
Yep.
What do you think about this Ukraine package that good old Republican Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, you know, worked with the Democrats on to get passed with zero, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Zero consideration for our, you know, us as a country and securing our border. And,
yeah,
you know, like this is I mean, personally, I'm against sending any money to Ukraine anymore. Nothing, no more. The only thing that if I was in charge, the only thing we would be doing is facilitating an end to it, you know, negotiations, diplomacy. That is the only thing we would be doing.
Yep. Yep.
But if you are going, you know, I understand that politics is politics and you have to play the game somewhat. but he's not playing the game. He's getting led around on a fucking leash like a little puppy, like a little pathetic puppy. And what really chaps my ass about it is Trump and his like rubber stamping of Mike Johnson and like, you know, always co-signing everything he says. And it's irritating, man, because I want, so there's a big libertarian thing on the internet. And I mean, I was like this particularly in the Mitt Romney, Obama election. It's like both sides are just as bad as the other. And particularly back then, that was the truth. Yep. I mean, not much difference between Romney and Obama. But I would say there's a little bit more difference between Trump and Biden, you know?
Yeah.
But Trump is making me think that it's all just superficial with this shit, you know? Now, I do try to give him the benefit of the doubt, thinking that, like I said, you have to play the game a little bit. And once he comes into power, maybe he'll just like shut the shit down, you know? But it does irritate me, man. It like, I'm still voting for Trump because what the fuck is the other option? I'm not voting for Biden. Nope. I'm going to vote for Michael Rechtenwald in the Libertarian Party. No.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not fucking voting for that guy. I might as well not vote. I would rather not vote. But I'm going to vote for Trump because it's the best option. Even if it's a shitty option, it's the best option.
Yeah.
But what do you think about all that?
What are the details? I seem to remember were they including funding for Ukraine and Israel in the bill? Is that what it was?
I think so, but I don't. All I saw was Ukraine. I didn't really look into it.
So one thing I heard, and it might have been recently on what's his face's podcast, Russell Brand. I like listening to that from time to time. He said that in the early phases of the war, I don't know when, but there was a deal on the table between Russia and Ukraine to end all of this. And the United States, I don't know the details. I feel like I'm talking, kind of like
bullied Ukraine into not doing it.
Yeah.
Pressured them.
They basically, we'll support you. So we shifted
peer pressure,
what their opinion would have been without our influence.
Yeah, we got a ton more Ukrainian people killed. It's like the whole thing is pathetic, man. But I'm sorry, I spoke on it for a while.
No,
so
I mean,
you go for it.
Well, I mean, I agree. I think that the ultimate goal should be to put an end to this. And if there was an opportunity to put an end to it early on, and we were instrumental in that not happening, like I just don't understand. It makes me immediately puts me in the frame of mind of a conspiracy theorist, and I say that like begrudgingly because it's not a conspiracy really. That the military-industrial complex had a lot of interest in it continuing, and a lot of money was on the table. And I don't know whether that was the only reason for it, but it's hard to imagine that wasn't a prime reason for our influence to continue this damn thing.
Yeah.
And continuing to fund it, especially with inflation the way it is in this country, it's inexcusable.
Yeah, man. I think that's a big part of it, lining the pockets of people. I think it's like a big money laundering event, to trickle money to, regime stooges and the higher ups, the people who are really calling the shots. But I think part of it is also ideological. Yeah. I think the democratic, the social democratic West, of these democracies, these social democracies, and all of the liberal garbage that comes with that, have a vested interest in destroying like the last vestiges of that kind of more traditional culture, which Russia is like a bastion of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It took me a while to come around to understanding that better. Like when you first started talking about when this conflict first started happening, we were talking more about Russia. Like I just realized how well the propaganda works, because I resist things and I don't even really understand why I'm doing it. Yeah. I resisted this idea that Russia was just defending itself, or that there was some legitimate reason for this. And when we started talking about this, it was like, nobody else is saying that. So my instinct is to say, it's wrong without ever questioning it. It's effective. The propaganda is effective,
super effective. And you know, I've hinted at this a lot over the years of us doing this podcast, but what you're talking about with us in Ukraine and Russia right now, you can apply that to other scenarios back in history that are like very propagandized for you to think one side was bad and the other side was good.
100%.
And then you look at the good side and you're like, those people were monsters.
Yeah.
Terrible, terrible monsters. And they did things that were as bad, if not worse, than the side that you're supposed to hate.
And then I hear that, and then I think of the way that the left is maligning the founding fathers. You know, it's propaganda, just the same way it was propaganda for me to be raised to believe they were like heroes.
Yeah.
And now young kids are being raised to think that they were moral villains and racists. You know.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is I think that the propaganda that says that the founding fathers are terrible and the propaganda that says that the founding fathers were heroes is kind of servicing the same end. It's like back then when we were saying they were heroes, it was facilitating a liberalization of culture, you know, away from monarchy, away from, you know, more typical hierarchical structure.
Yep.
And now that we've like completely bought into that, we need to, you know, extremize, you know, make the propaganda more extreme into being like, no, they weren't even heroes. They were terrible. We need to be even more, you know, we need to have, you know, transitioning clinics, gender transition clinics on every corner, you know, just like destroy all traditional thought, you know?
So I have an interesting idea for a reality show.
Yeah.
I don't know. This would probably have to be filmed for generations before it could be aired, because I think it would take generations. But I saw a new reality show on Netflix. They were advertising about prison, and the warden gives a certain block of the prison an opportunity to govern themselves. And he's like, look, we're going to take the guards away. We're going to open up all the doors. And this block is locked, but within the block, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And we're going to try this as an experiment. And the moment there's violence, the moment there's contraband, it all stops. But you have an opportunity to figure out how to get along and moderate your behavior. And we're just going to film it, and we're going to put it on TV. And so that's what this new documentary that popped up on Netflix got me thinking about. The way that John Stossel talks about the United States being 50 laboratories of innovation. So every state has an opportunity to do things differently and be governed differently. And we can see what works. And then all the other states can adopt the good stuff, and we can see what fails, and all of the states can avoid those problems. It's a really beautiful idea. So imagine a reality show where we have enough people to constitute a community. So I don't know how many people that would be. We can figure out the details at some point later when we're dealing with the producers, Kyle, and the director. Yeah. But in the meantime, imagine 50 communities, or however many communities, each one made up exclusively of people of a particular ideology. So you have your progressive community, you have your libertarian community, your anarchist community, your traditional conservative community, your communist community, whatever.
Yeah, man.
And then we just get to watch. As you know, as the audience, we just get to watch what happens.
That would be cool.
How long does it take for the leaders to become corrupt in the different kind of communities? How long till the propaganda starts? How long till, you know, which ones are going to succeed, like economically? Which ones are going to develop? I just think it would be interesting.
That would be.
And you could do that any way you want. You could do it along racial lines, religious lines, ideological lines.
Whatever community has the people. You know, if you can gather up enough people to create this community, have it, you know, make that community. Yeah, I think that would be interesting.
And then everybody could watch the communist communities failing spectacularly.
But what if they succeeded?
Then we would learn something. I guess.
I mean, depending on how you define communism, I don't have a hard time seeing them succeeding in some aspects, you know?
Yeah.
Now, if we're talking about like Soviet communism, like the Soviet brand of communism was more a tool to facilitate an ideology that had nothing to do with economics, you know? So I think that in the sense of like a community taking care of each other, I think that could work, you know? But like I said, that Bolshevik style communism was much more about creating an ideological world that really didn't have much to do with economics.
Well, you couldn't have like, so in the traditional Soviet communist system, the what do they call it? They just call it what they call the final stage after the what do they call it? The totalitarianism of the
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the terms though.
Well, they basically say that a totalitarian system has to arise to stomp out all the bad capitalism stuff before the utopia can happen. Now, the utopia to me sounds like that hippie commune or the kibbutzes or whatever in Israel, where people are just growing their own food and you know, and there's no police and everyone just gets along and all that kind of thing. That is polar opposite of the central authority of a traditional communist nation. It's like there you have a dictator who gets to decide the rules and gets to decide the economic production, and you know, it's all centralized from the top down. Where the hippie commune is all bottom up or bottom out, or however you want to call it. It's like that. We're going to take care of each other. We're living in a small enough community that we more or less know what we need and what each other needs. We provide that, and everybody chips in to do that. Like, that's a beautiful thing if it works. But it couldn't be any more different than Soviet communism under Stalin.
For sure.
You know?
I think what's interesting about that is that in that like middle out version of communism, that seems like it could be like somewhat effective, whereas the top down version of communism seems like destined to fail. But in other forms of like these potential societies, I think that the top down can work too. You know, if you have a person at the top, or, you know, a set of elites at the top who have, you know, a moral foundation that inclines them to want to take care of the people, then I think that can work as well. You know, it's worked a lot throughout history. There have been very successful monarchical, you know, civilizations. Right. So,
yeah, I wonder if it has to do with like the size of the community. It's like once the community gets too big for a hippie commune model to work, then the top-down model becomes the best. And everybody has to be on board with what the authority is supporting in terms of ideology. The small community's more or less going to be on the same page. The bigger it gets, the more difficult that is. So you have to create that hierarchical structure, and everybody still has to be on board about what's at the top of the hierarchy. And then this becomes one of those cultural, racial diversity. I'm trying to think of the word. Concerns. It's like if you have a community that's more homogenous, then they're more likely to share the same hierarchy. You know, and then as things become more diverse, there's all kinds of different ideas going on, all kinds of different hierarchies. Then it becomes more difficult to manage, and then that top-down approach becomes it requires force. Then it becomes a dictatorship. You know, then it becomes something totalitarian. So, what's the type of government that, if there is such a thing, that makes that model successful, that diversity model?
Yeah,
because that's what we're in the West.
Yeah,
like it or not.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see what you're saying, but I don't know. Yeah. I would be interested to see. That would be an interesting reality show / experiment.
Yeah, I think the idea of the nation if we identify with it, is really powerful in terms of keeping a diverse population going in the same direction. You know, if we all agree with and identify with whatever the nation means, and the only thing more powerful than that is God, is religion.
Yeah, which, I mean, that Christian nationalism has baggage at this point. You know, people talk a lot about Christian nationalism. I think that is a fine enough description for what I consider myself at this point. But I just, you know, I think that to have that nation, you do have to be pointed at something together. You all have to buy into something together. And like this idea of civic nationalism, where you come here and you adopt our ideas and you could be from anywhere. And as long, you know, it's not working, you know, because nobody does. The people who come here do not buy into the ideology that made America America. Most Americans don't even buy into that ideology anymore. So I do think that a return to some kind of more traditional religious, that, you know, some kind of traditional religious ideology being that thing that we're pointing ourselves towards would be beneficial to us.
So the question that comes to my mind that I think a lot of, I hate being this person that brings up lefty ideas or tries to defend them.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna do it anyway. What's the difference between Christian nationalism, like you just described it, and the caliphate? Like what?
Not much.
So a theocracy? Are we talking about that as some sort of ideal?
I don't think that it's effective to tell people you have to be a Christian, you know, where, you know, like in the caliphate, that's what it is. It's like you are converting to Islam or we're killing you, you know? I don't think that that's effective. I think that, you know, Spain is proof of that. You know, they had a bunch of Jewish people who they tried to force to be Catholics, and a bunch of them pretended to be Catholics. And as soon as they got the opportunity to stab the ruling Catholic, you know, elites in the back, they took it, you know? So yeah, I don't think that that's how we should go about it. But I do think that, like I was saying earlier about like manipulating the knobs of society to like gear us back towards that kind of religious, like social pressure, things like that. I think that would be very effective.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of how we do that is we seize control of institutions and things like that. I mean, that's going to take time. It's going to be a long project. You know, it's not going to happen overnight, but I do think it might happen very slowly and then very quickly, you know? So
what do you mean by seizing control? That sounds scary.
Seizing control. It's, you know,
of
the institutions, all the institutions,
the internet.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of like the educational systems and things like that.
Yeah.
One big thing, and I'm planning on doing, you know, an episode, a solo episode about it, is get involved in your church, start going to church, go there as much as possible, develop relationships, get on the board of your church. So what made me think about this is that guy that I had on, Kyle Matovic. He posted something about Louisiana passed some kind of law that said, if you take public money at a public school, which, I mean, that's the nature of public school, that they're all taking public money.
Yep.
You have to display like the 10 Commandments, I think it was. And a bunch of people are up in arms about that. Personally, I'm fine with that. I don't have much of a problem with it at all.
Yep.
But I do think the better option would be for churches. Lots of churches have schools, you know, like mostly it seems in our area anyways to be Catholic churches and Lutheran churches. They all have schools. They have, you know, kindergarten through 8th grade, and then there's high schools and whatnot. And I think that we need innovative, driven, motivated people to get involved in, like I said, get on the church board, find innovative ways to increase the amounts of schools, find ways to drive the prices down so we can get more people going to religious schools. So they don't even have to worry about sending their kids to be educated by people who hate them and despise their ideology, you know? And it doesn't stop at just schools, you know? Like, I think about, like, you know, back in a long time ago, the church was the people who took care of everything, you know? And I think that we need to return to that. We need to find a way to get back to that. And people talk a lot about, don't worry so much about the presidential election. The election for who your mayor is much more important than the presidential election. The election for your sheriff is much more important than the presidential election.
Yeah.
And I think the smaller we get, the bigger of an influence you can have. And I think that your church is a great place to start. I think we can make a big difference if we start doing that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Like I like this idea of using the free market to undermine the communist takeover, ideological takeover of the public school system. It's like if you make the incentives from the bottom up, literally from the bottom up, if you make the incentives and the infrastructure sufficient to where people want to send their kids to religious schools, and you see like an emptying of public schools, can you imagine the panic?
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine the panic?
Dude, the incentive is already there too. I mean, I'm sure you know this, private schools are way better than public schools.
Yep.
So the incentive for that kind of thing is already there. And I do think that, like I said, it doesn't have to stop at schooling. You know, I think of like the influence of psychology and psychiatry in the modern world. It's brainwashing a lot of the time, man. It just convinces people to hate their parents. It like facilitates this anti-authoritarian kind of spirit that we've been talking about in this episode. You know, like there might be, I don't know, there very well might be, but like my mind says, why is there not like a bigger, more accessible version, like a Christian version of BetterHelp? You know what I'm saying? Where you can, particularly, I think about this with like Orthodox churches, because there's not a ton of Orthodox churches. If you live out in the sticks, you might have to drive 3 hours to go to an Orthodox church, you know? So like, why can't the Orthodox church develop some kind of like you know, I'm not saying like you go to church online, although that might be better than nothing, you know, but you know, like if somebody needs guidance, talk to a priest, you know, don't talk to some person who is educated in these higher education institutions that hate us. You know, they like, it's their goal to drive us out of society, and we're going to them for help. We're going to them to help us like restructure the way that we think about the world. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah. It reminds me of Stefan Molyneux again when you bring that up. And I'm just thinking like the way I imagine, because Stefan's an older fella, you know, talking to people, counseling, basically what he's doing with people. And those conversations so often go to like, you have stifling parents that Defoo, yeah.
Get rid of those people.
Yeah, you have stifling parents who, you know, maybe they're old school, they're conservative, they're religious, they're, you know, whatever, and they force you to conform to them, and you know, it causes you trauma. And Stefan says you should leave, you should just dissociate from your parents. And I just wonder about the same thing happening today. It's like, imagine a bunch of based kids coming up in the next generation with these parents from Gen Z, and like these fucking, you know, crazy woke parents. You can imagine the same sort of thing. It's like
the based kids being like, fuck you.
Yeah. The parents are trying to make them wear dresses and, you know, pretending categories don't exist, and, you know, confusing the shit out of them.
I'll tell you what I think the most based position is, and it seems counterintuitive. It's probably, it might rub some people the wrong way. The most based position is take care of your parents, regardless of how they, you know, it's like, don't defoo, don't, what does that even stand for? Disown the family of origin, like something like that. Yeah. Don't do that. Take care of your parents, take care of your family. Like, yes, they might disagree with you, but they need you. And, you know, I'm not saying in all cases, obviously there are like extremely abusive parents and you shouldn't be a part of that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of modern psychology, it's like, oh, were your parents disciplined you? Well, you should cut them off.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, they were trying to help you, dipshit.
Yep.
You know? So yeah, I think if you want to be super based, take care of people. Be open and loving to even people who disagree with you, and help them to see it your way. And maybe they won't ever, but that's a more honorable position than just like letting your parents die alone.
100%.
You know?
100%.
So that's where, you know.
And what goes around comes around, and karma and all that. You have to realize, I mean, somebody has to say it. If you let your parents die alone because you're bitter and can't get over yourself, remember, you're not.
Yeah, man. I don't know. We had lined up to talk about. I had a nice transition for it in mind, but it like slipped out of my head.
Shit. Oh,
Listen to a whole lot of Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of interesting episodes. I've listened to 2 this week, which is like, 200% more than I normally do, because I generally don't listen to Rogan.
Yep.
But he had on Graham Hancock and an archaeologist named Flint Dibble.
Yes.
Which is a hilarious name.
Sure is. Yep.
And did you watch it, or did you just listen to it?
A little column A, a little column B. Yeah.
So you saw Flint Dibble.
I did see Flint Dibble.
He matches his name, dude. He's like the biggest fucking goofball I've ever seen in my life.
So maybe I'm going to state the obvious, but the thing that caught my attention about Flint Dibble the most, two things. Firstly, he was wearing a ridiculous hat, looked like one of those mushroom hats. But he's a professor, right? So he's wearing a suit with a vest, and he's got this hat on. And rather than take the hat off,
for it the whole time,
he put his Joe Rogan headphones like this,
yeah,
so that he could still wear his hat.
Yeah.
Which was a clearly an intentional thing. He wanted to wear this hat.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's talking a lot with his hands like this.
With his long ass sleeves and popping out.
His sleeves, his dress shirt was at least one size too big.
Yeah.
And the sleeves were like longer than his suit coat by a lot. Mm-hmm. And it was like, who dressed this guy, man?
I think he dressed himself.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. And I hate to be critical of him for that.
With the coming with the ad homs.
Yes. Yes.
I did it too. The dude looks goofy. And he makes it hard to take him seriously on some level.
Yes.
I think maybe what part of the hat thing is about is Indiana Jones was an archaeologist.
Yeah, could be that.
And I think in the first episode that Rogan did with Graham Hancock, he had Duncan Trussell on and Graham Hancock. This was a long time ago. And I think either Duncan Trussell or Joe said, you're like the actual Indiana Jones, like you're real life Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And I think that Flint Dibble's like, no, I'm the real Indiana Jones, so I got this hat and my sleeves that are too long.
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe he's just a fucking dork.
Or maybe his hair's thinning,
Could be.
Could be something like that.
Yeah, Graham Hancock still got pretty good hair for
sure does.
72-year-old fella.
Yes.
Yeah. What was your general impression of that episode?
Well,
did you listen to the whole thing?
Yeah.
I haven't yet. I'm like almost through it, but
well, so I kind of know based on what you told me before today's podcast, what the position that you feel. I think Graham made his argument from his perspective and didn't really push back as much as I would have liked against Flint's criticisms. Flint gave his presentation almost, and then Graham did his presentation. They went back and forth doing these little mini presentations.
Yeah.
I
thought that Dibble was much more effective in combating Graham's points,
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, you have an idea of what I think. I think you might be reading into it a little bit, because I wasn't super specific, to be fair.
Yeah.
What I said was that I was watching it and that I didn't think it was going that well for Graham. Mm-hmm. And that's as specific as I was. So I don't think that Graham Hancock is like some quack, Right. I think that he has interesting ideas that are worth considering for sure. but I will say that even before, I thought it was interesting that that episode came out, because I've been like kind of questioning the whole Graham Hancock thing for a little bit now, just because I'm in this process of like questioning everything that I had formerly
how
believed.
postmodern of you, Kyle.
Yeah, I know, man.
Yeah.
The ruthless criticism of all that exists.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't think that Graham Hancock was effective in a lot of ways, and kind of in a debate sense, you know, like he just wasn't an effective debater. He could have been much better, and maybe made better points. But I do think that even aside from like just being better at debating, Dibble made some good points. Like,
he did.
He combated. So, like, one of Graham Hancock's things is none of these archaeologists are willing to talk to me, you know. And the moment one of them does, he falls on his face, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, why haven't more archaeologists, you know, if like Flint Dibble can come on and like kind of dismantle Graham Hancock in a debate.
Yeah.
Why have not more of them done that? You know, and I think a lot of it boils down to this like liberal progressive idea of like, don't give them the time of day, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of people that I like a lot who are very anti-debate. And I understand where they're coming from to a certain extent. I just enjoy debate. So I don't think debate is gay. But this episode, like, kind of, it's like, I can't help but see the value in debate in this, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we can get into like the actual points. I've got some notes on it.
Well, I can tell you, we definitely look at your notes. I want to tell you the thing that if I steel man you here, the thing that I noticed that I thought was the most compelling pushback against what Graham was saying was when he, like, towards the middle of that podcast, Graham got onto a thing about the Great Pyramids, and we're like, oh, here we go. And Graham's talking about how the length of the base and the length from the base to the top, if you multiply it by the same number, you get a really close approximation of the circumference of the Earth around the equator, or the circumference of the Earth from the poles, or something like that. And that's one of those interesting, how did the ancients know that information well enough to be able to model this building off the dimensions of the Earth? That's completely unexplainable. And then Flint says, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he comes in and says, did you know if you take this example or this example or this example, and you multiply it by, the similar numbers or whatever it was, that they're even closer approximations to the like 99.99% right, of the circumference, the equatorial circumference of the Earth. And when he did that, it reminded me of when I was a kid and I saw the Bible code stuff for the first time, and the top of my head blew off of my skull. I was like, secret messages in the Bible that you can decode with computers. Oh my God. That must mean there was some planning involved, and these books were written over, vast stretches of time by different people. And somehow these codes managed to be, I was completely amazed by it. And then I'm watching a History Channel documentary, and they're like, yeah, you can do that with Shakespeare. It's like any book long enough. You take Pride and Prejudice and you put it through the same software that comes up with the Bible code, you get even better shit. It's like, and that was the kind of thing that I felt when Dibble brought up the fact that other buildings are better approximations or whatever, and there's clearly no connection. And that was such an important piece of evidence for Graham's theory about the ancient people's knowledge of astronomy and their ability to build buildings so closely reflective of them. And I thought that was a pretty good counterpunch by Mr. Flint, big long sleeves Dibble.
Yeah, that's kind of an example. I feel like there were a lot of examples where Graham Hancock would say something and Flint would say, yeah, but, and it just kind of like took all the wind out of Graham's sails, you know? So one of the first things is Graham Hancock is talking about there's so much of, you know, the continental shelf and the landmass that we have not done archaeological digs on.
Yeah.
And if you don't think about it at all, which apparently I never did, you're like, yeah, why haven't we dug up everything? It reminds me of when I was a kid. I have this like memory that sticks out of my mind very much, where I was talking with my mom about the Loch Ness monster. And I was like, why don't they just take all the water out of Loch Ness to find it, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that's kind of where Graham Hancock is coming. It's like, well, why don't we just dig up everything, you know? And Flint Dibble's response to that is, we've dug up a lot. We've done a lot of digging. And in all of the digging we've done, we haven't found anything that supports your theory, you know? So, and it's not like we're just picking random sites. We have, you know, he played some woman who's like talking about how the places they pick to dig are like, you know, informed decisions. It's not like just picking random places. And so that's part of like the academic version of it. And then there's the, if we're doing any building, we have to, you know, like, you know, a lot of stuff that's been discovered is because people want to build some kind of like housing development.
Right.
And, you know, you have to look, you know, take a look. And I don't think that Graham Hancock really had a good comeback for that. You know?
Well, yes, but what he did say is, he said, look, in the modern day, we live amongst hunter-gatherers. So there's people all over the world who live like that. And if somebody was looking back at 2024, they could easily find people living like we do, but also people living like hunter-gatherers. So if we find hunter-gatherer remains from prehistory, we should expect to see that. That was his defense.
Yeah, but the hole in that is that 2,000, 3,000 years from now, when we look back, we might be able to find evidence of hunter-gatherers still. We probably will. But there's also going to be a fuck ton of evidence from us.
True.
And there's none of that for Grams, you know?
Do you think when Graham said, and I realize that his argument really amounts to when he says we've only surveyed 5% of the submerged, what's it called, the shelf? What
the continental
shelf? Continental shelf. We've only we've only seen a small portion of that scientifically. His argument is, well, there's a lot of, it's like the Bigfoot argument. It's like the Pacific Northwest has got lots of deep woods. Nobody can possibly explore it. Sure, there could be Bigfoot there. It's like, we can't rule it out. That was the argument he was making. He's like, look, there's 95% of the shelf we haven't had eyes on. Anything could be there. I don't think that's a super strong argument, but it's not nothing.
No,
that's a real.
I don't even think that Flint Dibble would say that it's nothing. Like, we'll get to some disagreements that I had with Flint, but the disagreements that I had with Flint, I kind of wasn't really happy with Graham on either. But I do feel like Flint was being fairly, like, you know, polite and like open-minded and like not being like, Graham, you're a fucking maniac, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. Like, again, I just don't think that Graham was super convincing on that kind of stuff. Yes, there could be, but what reason do we have to believe that there is? And like, throughout that entire episode, Graham would bring up something and Flint would be like, here's the reason why that doesn't make any sense. You know? Let's see what else I got in my notes here. So one thing that I thought was funny, and Graham did a lot of this kind of stuff. Flint Dibble said, looking at ice core samples, you know, depending on how deep the ice core is, that's like the moment in time that it's at. And he says that in these eras where you're saying there should be evidence of this great civilization, there's no like lead in the ice cores, you know, so that demonstrates that there was no like large scale metallurgy, you know. And Graham Hancock's retort to that was, yes, well, maybe they decided as a group that they weren't going to use metal. It's like, what the fuck what are you talking? I mean, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is kind of a silly response, but I think when you look at the megalithic structures that Graham talks about,
stone.
It's all stone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like Flint Dibble did and not only Flint Dibble, this is like something that I've kind of been I was kind of thinking about before I even got to this episode that made this episode so interesting is like the idea that hunter-gatherers could not have done that used to be a lot more convincing to me than it is now. You know, like now I think that, you know, I've heard people talk about how hunter-gatherers actually have like more time. You know, like agriculture takes a lot of work. And if you live in an area of plenty, it's not, you know, you like go grab some food, you know, it's like you run out to the fast food thing and grab some food. It's not that difficult. So if you live in an area of plenty, maybe you do have time to make that kind of stuff. And people were smart back then. You know, it's not like they were dumb cavemen, you know, they were like modern people who just happened to be hunter gatherers. And not only that, but they were much more driven by like the spiritual aspect of the world. So they're like, I would think more inspired to build that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just another area where it's like, I just don't really think that Graham Hancock's case, it's interesting, but it's not that strong. It's not like based on anything, you know.
Didn't Flint Dibble try to push back on the younger dry's impact thing?
Yeah.
I believe people don't.
Yeah.
You know, Graham's like, I don't know. I don't remember how much he defended that, but he's like,
I mean, his retort to that was, yeah, but a lot of people do. And it's, I mean, so that's like one of the areas where I differ from both of them. Excuse me. Like Flint Dibble represents like, you know, so, you know, the scientific establishment, we'll say, you know, and Graham Hancock kind of represents this like fringe movement, you know, but at the base of everything for Graham Hancock, he is still saying the science is valuable. We just need to do more science, you know?
Yeah.
And every time he would say something like that, Flint Dibble would be like, yes, but we have done a bunch of science and there's still no reason to believe what you're saying, you know? So I just like, it wasn't super convincing to me at all.
Yeah.
You know, at one point they were talking about all the shipwrecks that there's tons of like ancient shipwrecks.
Yep.
And in all of those, there's like really nothing to support anything that Graham says. And he's like, well, we just need to find more of them. It's like, how much more of it do we need to find, Graham?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Graham kept saying things like the Sahara is very big, the Amazon's very big, and we haven't researched them enough to see what's there. That any of that could be history changing stuff. He never once mentioned Antarctica, which I thought was interesting. Well, he did mention Peri Reyes, the map, which shows Antarctica, but he never talked about Antarctica. But that's another thing. It's not only is it the Sahara and the Amazon, it's Antarctica. And I think, I don't know, man, I kind of hope that when the ice melts, we're going to find some shit in Antarctica.
Global warming is going to uncover some shit for us. Yeah, man. Burn that coal, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. What else did you write down on?
So I thought another thing that was interesting was the Yonaguni. They were talking about that and they were comparing it to Sacsayhuaman.
Sexy woman. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And Flint Dibble was saying, you know, Graham Hancock was like, look at all the right angles. Look at all of this. It's clearly man-made. And Flint Dibble's like, maybe, you know, like, but I don't see any like hardcore reason to believe that. And then Graham Hancock's well, compare it to Sacsayhuaman. And they pull up pictures and Sacsayhuaman is like very obviously created by people. And there's no dispute about that. Obviously it was, you know, and then they compare it to Yonaguni and it's like, yeah, there are right angles, but it's like, it doesn't look like any architecture that humans built ever. You know, it's like there are right angles, but it's like nonsensical. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's not like, it's not laid out in any kind of like reasonable way. Whereas Sacsayhuaman it's like, again, like I said, nobody disputes that was built by people.
It's funny because I remember that image of the comparison between Sacsayhuaman and Yonaguni, and I'm pretty sure it was like an inclined plane with steps built into it. And I remember thinking, yeah, that looks just like it. And you just said It looks nothing like it.
Well,
you know?
no, I don't think that it looks nothing like it. I think that, like I said, there are right angles. There is like a tiered step kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's obvious evidence that Sacsayhuaman is built by human beings.
Right. Sure.
And Yonaguni, like the best that you can say is that it could be designed by people.
Yeah.
Or you could say that nature does weird shit, you know? Like, I mean, you've got this Mandelbrot set over here.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that is design, you know?
Yeah.
But not human
the
design.
Fingerprint of God, Kyle. That's what they call that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny because that's the name of Graham's book.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
So yeah.
Keep going. What else you got? I got one other thing I want to talk about, but I want to get through your list.
I mean, see if it doesn't come up. I got quite a bit here more.
Oh, okay. All right.
So if you want to go in.
Well, the only thing that I wanted to bring up was the interesting moment after like whatever the introductions were done when Graham gets Dibble on when he makes him face the music about ridiculing Graham in the press and calling him a racist, a white supremacist.
Yeah, I've got that on.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll hold off.
No. We can get there.
Well, first of all, I thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed the fact that he was put on the spot about it. He was forced to face the man 4 feet away that he tried to throw under the bus and ruin his Netflix special and ruin his reputation in a way that wasn't even necessary. Like what he did on the Rogan Experience, dismantling his arguments, that's totally legit. Yeah. Calling him a white supremacist is fucking make-believe fantasy. Yeah. And he was forced to look Graham in the eye, and Graham didn't let him off the hook. And he tried to wiggle out of that, and Joe wouldn't let him. Joe was like, you did say that. You remember that? Yeah. I fucking loved that.
Yeah, so that is one of those areas where, you know, earlier I said that there were areas where I didn't really agree with Flint, but I really wasn't happy with Graham's. That's what like you meant? Yeah. So
what did you think Graham was being like whiny about it?
I think that the best strategy for when people call you a racist today is be like, yeah, and what? So what? Who cares? What the fuck is your point? You know, what, like you're making a face like who fuck you?
I'm
like
just imagining saying
the
that
Asha logo stuff that we were talking about. Go fuck yourself, dude. Like you want to call me a racist? Yeah. I think that like my race. Yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud of the people that I came from. I don't have any fucking problem with that. You know. So like, I feel like Graham was just being like a liberal. You know, and Graham is a liberal. You know, like at the end of the day, Graham's a fucking liberal. You know. So like that, I feel like Graham could have just like, fuck you, dude, you know? But Graham's like, you call me a racist, you know? He's like all indignant about it. It's like, who fucking cares? You know? I just like, don't buy in, like, call me a racist. That's fine. Yeah. I do not care at all.
Yeah. I mean, if Graham's feelings were hurt, it'd be one thing, but he was defending his work and the money that he was making on his life's work that this guy tried to undermine on some nonsense. And the example that came up was the Olmec faces. And that was pretty funny. That was a pretty funny moment too, because he said Flint Dibble was making the argument that Graham was suggesting that that all of these monolithic sites and ancient accomplishments that people all over the world had done, monument wise mostly, that stuff wasn't attributable to the people who lived there. It was attributable to some more ancient past forgotten civilization, and
Flint, some intrepid white people,
right? But that was the leap that Flint made that Graham never made, where Flint said, you know, that presupposes that the people who were there beforehand were dumb, were white.
Oh, okay, I see.
And capable, somebody capable of doing this, and implied that that's what Graham was suggesting. And it's like, I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's completely concocted and twisted to be able to use that particular insult against him. And he brings up the Olmec skulls or the Olmec faces. Yeah. And Graham's like, what I suggested was that the Olmec faces look African.
Yeah.
Not white. African. And Flint Dibble was tripping. He was tripping over. He was dibbling over himself there a little bit. Yeah, he sure was, man.
Yeah,
tripped over his sleeves, I think.
That was one of the more, that racist thing was one of the more like kind of cringe, but also interesting parts of the whole thing. I will say, when it got brought up, Flint Dibble said, "I never called you racist. I said that you were citing things that I believe are racist." And I will say that I think that in this debate, Flint Dibble seemed good faith enough to where I was like, okay, maybe that is what you meant. Now, I would say that Flint Dibble saying that those sources are racist is gay. It's dumb, you know?
It is.
I think that there's good reason to believe, like, you know, go back to the Archeologist episode that we did. I think there's good reason to believe that the Indo-European people, whether those people were all white or not, I think that there's good reason to believe that maybe they were like much more intrepid and got a lot further across the world than people want to give them credit for.
Sure.
So I think that calling those sources racist is stupid. But I am willing to like give Flint the benefit of the doubt that he was not calling Graham racist, you know, that he's saying he's citing things that are problematic, you know, even if he is not actually racist himself, he's citing things that are problematic, which I still think is lame, you know.
It's totally lame. He said that on the record to a reporter that
I do think he did say that I never said that they've taken me out of context, and journalists are fucking scumbags.
They are.
So I don't have a hard, again, I just don't have a hard time giving him the benefit of the doubt on that. I mean, he's a weird little dweeb, and he's obviously like anti-racist, you know, anti-racist.
Sure.
He's an establishment, institutional, you know, little dweeb, you know?
Yes.
But
yes.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt.
I think, and I just think that Flint Dibble, when he's around other liberal academics, feels completely comfortable saying that.
Oh yeah.
He feels completely it's almost expected that he said that he criticized somebody on the basis of white supremacy if they're white. I think that was something he said among his liberal chums that once he got in front of, you know, normal people, then he was forced to defend it. And I thought that was fucking important. I was glad to see it. And I think Flint Dibble tried to wiggle out of that as quickly as he could. He did not want to have that conversation. He did not want to talk about that. And he didn't. Did he apologize? I don't know if he did. He might have.
I don't think so. I don't think he felt like, to be fair, I don't think he felt like he had anything to apologize for.
Well, I think he does.
Well, yeah, that's fine. I mean, you know, but I don't think that he thinks he does.
Yeah.
In his mind, being racist is bad.
Yeah.
And the sources that Graham cites are racist. Like, I don't think that what I'm saying and how Flint Dibble feels are contradictory in any way. It's like, he thinks being racist is bad. He thinks those sources are racist, but he didn't necessarily say that Graham is racist, because one thing I will say about Graham is he doesn't come off as racist at all, you know? And like, I know that like people like Flint Dibble tend to be kind of ideologically possessed. But I just didn't really get that impression from him too much. Like when he said, "I don't think you're racist and I've never called you racist," I just like didn't strike me as ingenuine. You know?
Yeah, no, I agree. Can I have that last beer, Kyle?
Yeah, of
over
course.
There? Thank you, sir. Something else I was going to say. I'm losing it. Flint Dibble, dweeb with the sleeve.
Dweeb with the sleeves.
Yeah, it'll come to me.
So Graham Hancock said a few things that came off as very shit-lib, like progressive retard.
Yep.
So at one point they were talking about the pyramids, and they were talking about Robert Schoch, the geologist, who said that the markings on it are erosion.
Yep.
Water erosion specifically. And, you know, Graham Hancock's like, Robert Schoch says this, and then Flint Dibble says, yeah, but a bunch of people say that it's not. And Graham Hancock says, yeah, but a bunch of people say that it is. And but then Graham Hancock says, but I don't really care how many it is. What I care about is that Robert Schoch spoke his truth.
Yeah, I remember that.
Come on, man. Like, just like at one point he's saying, it was about the Younger Dryas thing. He's like, just because you say that it's not true, just because you say that it's a refutation doesn't mean that it is a refutation. Well, just because a bunch of scientists say that it is doesn't mean that it is. You know, like you're falling into the same trap that you're laying for Flint Dibble. It's like both of you have a corpus of scientists who say that it is and that it isn't. And it's, for a person like me, it's easier. I'm like in a better position because I like value science to a certain extent, but they both value science much more than I do. You know, I would say that Flint probably more than Graham, but I pointed this out earlier. At the base of everything, Graham is still like science, you know, he like still wants the science to be done.
Yeah.
So he's like scientifically minded as well, you know?
Absolutely. Hold on. Before you move on to the next one, I remembered what I wanted to say. We were talking about Flint Dibble criticizing sources for being racist. And I wanted to talk about like racist science for a second. Mm-hmm. So you know how like in the old days, I don't know when this would have been, like the 1800s, I'm guessing, they were studies, statistics, like measurements of skulls, you know, like even the Hitler scientists were like measuring skulls and the shapes of skulls, and they were trying to show how there's patterns in different ethnic groups, racial groups, where their skulls are different shapes or whatever, and they were using that science because they were racist, I suppose you could say, but you know, in that day and age, we would consider every human being in the West back in the 40s racist, according to today's standards. So whether they were racist then, I don't know, but they're racist now. The point is, they identified differences that could help them tell whether a skull belonged to a person of a particular ethnic or racial group. And they used that science to say that white people were superior to others, which, you know, you can question that all you want. But the truth is, the science, that the data that they came up with is legitimate. There are differences in the morphology of skulls. That's real science that came from the racists. Yeah. And the same thing with like a modern IQ study. Yeah. It's all considered racist now. But the truth is, there are statistical differences in IQ among people. That's real science.
Yeah, to go back to the skulls thing, if Flint Dibble is out at a site and he digs up a skull, there are people who are going to come in and they're going to measure the skull and look at the skull, and they're going to be like, this person was of this area, this ethnicity. And it's like pretty solid science. You know, as much as I value science at this point, it seems like pretty solid science.
They're going to use words like Caucasoid. This has got a Caucasoid skull shape.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man.
So I guess the whole point of that is to say the fact that we would disregard a scientist on the basis of them being racist and all of their work, right? It undermines all of their work. That's a mistake, right? Like, people could be racist or not, but the science and the data is not racist, right? It's like, it's a matter of interpretation. And to write off somebody for being racist entirely, to me, is equivalent to what we're seeing with the Zoomers pulling down statues of Thomas Jefferson. You're pulling down statues of Thomas Jefferson because wholesale you can't listen, you can't take anything he says seriously because he's a racist. What? Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. You know, it undermines his participation in the founding of the country and the Declaration or the Constitution. Like, really, the fact that he had some culturally normal ideas in his age that we now think are bad means we don't take him seriously at all.
Yeah, nothing he said is valuable.
And I think Flint Dibble was doing a little bit of that.
Yeah. My biggest departure from Flint Dibble in this whole thing was like the racial thing. You know, again, I wasn't particularly satisfied with Graham's, like getting all butthurt about being called racist,
Yeah.
So like, dude, have some fucking nuts, have a sack.
Well, listen, I liked it in the beginning when he brought it up. He brings it up at the end again, and that's when I agree with you. I think it's like, dude, it's like we went through this, and now you want to make sure everybody caught it, that you're butthurt about this thing.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was interesting was they were talking about the King's List and like how we place that in time. And Flint Dibble said, yeah, but they just do it by generations. And depending on how you interpret a generation, like it's really hard to have like specific dates with that kind of stuff. So you would also want, like hard physical evidence.
Yeah.
And Graham Hancock says, you would want that. Like that's what you would want. And it's like, yeah, but dude, like I've said a bunch of times already, at the end of the day, you are a person who values the science. So when it doesn't benefit you, you're like, we don't need any hard physical evidence. It's fucking stupid, man.
Yeah. I can see that for sure.
So I thought that was kind of funny. And the thing that I thought was kind of the most telling about like a way in which Graham was kind of being a hypocrite is at one point, I think they were reading one of the articles or something that Flint had written or, had been interviewed for. And they accused Graham of a conspiracy theory. And Graham was very indignant about it. He was like, what the fuck is the conspiracy theory? That's a direct quote.
Did he really say that?
Yeah,
Somehow I missed that.
Yeah. But Graham very obviously is like supporting a conspiracy theory. Like he was all indignant about it, but like his whole premise is that like big archaeology is like purposely avoiding digging up these. What the fuck is that if it's not a conspiracy?
Now, do you see that akin to the way that we talk about history? Like the history is rewritten and reinterpreted, and so you can't trust it. You have to question it. It's like we have to question what we've been told about history, because it may have, and the reality of it may be very different, and we are taught only one thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know what you mean, but like with Graham, like I said, like I've said a bunch of times, he still values the science, and it's like you accuse big archaeology of not digging enough, not doing this, and it's like some kind of overarching conspiracy against, exposing the real truth of history. But I mean, I think a solid argument is that like if Flint Dibble, who was an archaeologist, saw any kind of evidence that supported this thing, every archaeologist in the world would want to make that discovery. And it's just that the evidence of what we have dug up does not support Graham Hancock's ideas.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I fully believe that people like Flint Dibble would be like, let's fucking go. Let's start digging up, And I just don't, I don't know, man. Again, I'm not like completely writing off Graham's ideas, but I see Flint's point that from the evidence we do have, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of evidence for it.
I wonder why Graham didn't ask Flint to explain how the megaliths were moved at different parts of the, he's always showing pictures of, the Andes, monolithic structures in the Andes or wherever, talking about how the quarry is, 100 miles away, and they moved it uphill, and these things weigh hundreds of thousands of pounds. Like, and you can't fit a piece of paper or a razor blade between them. And some of these stones look like they've been melted and shaped to fit exactly. Why did they not talk about that shit at all?
I feel like they did a little bit when they were talking about Egypt. They were talking about how do you get a megalithic stone 300 feet in the air. And Flint Dibble was talking something about wet sand.
Yeah.
And I can't really specifically remember. But yeah, they definitely could have gone deeper into that for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to the idea that there were technologies and, like scientific areas that have been lost to us. I don't have a hard time buying into that at all. But I do have a little bit harder of a time buying into the idea that there was some great civilization that was advanced, you know, not in exactly the same way we are, but like more like we are, because I just think that there would be more evidence for it. Like one of the things they kept pointing to is, you know, even before this supposed Younger Dryas event, we have evidence for hunter-gatherers. So why do we not have evidence of this other stuff? And you, like Graham Hancock saying, even though he doesn't think he's a conspiracy theorist, that there's a conspiracy to not cover that up, that doesn't hold water for me, because like I said, Flint Dibble would love to be the guy who uncovers that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that like, what was that guy's name? Heinrich Schliemann, I think his name was, that found Troy. You know, I think nobody believed Troy existed at the time. They thought it was just a myth. It was a story. It wasn't a real place.
Yeah.
And he went and he found it. Now the establishment would never have gone digging there because they believed it was a myth. And once Heinrich Schliemann found it, then I believe the archaeologists were like, let's get in on this. But nobody was putting the spade in the soil but fucking Heinrich Schliemann.
Yeah, but they are putting the spade in the soil. Like, and that was like a big part of Flint's argument, is that like, we're putting the spade in the soil. We're putting a lot of spades in a lot of soil and nothing is coming up. You know, we have evidence for things as ethereal as footprints, the footprints of hunter-gatherers. But this like giant megalithic society that you're saying, we don't have any evidence of that for some reason, you know?
Yeah.
And I definitely think that puts a big hole in Graham's argument, you know?
Yeah. Listen, I'm glad that they had the conversation. I thought it was interesting, but I think they could easily do another one, which I don't think they will, but they could easily do another one.
I think that Flint would be happy too.
You think?
I think so.
What if like Robert Schock was on there too? What if it was Flint, Robert Schock, Graham Hancock? Throw in Duncan just for shits and gigs.
Well, I mean, you're like out, and I mean, Flint needs some buddies too. Like, I kind of thought that Rogan might be a biased moderator, and I do think he was at certain points, but overall, I expected him to be worse, and I think he did a pretty good job.
I think Schock would be a good
like middleman.
Middleman, yeah. I would say what's the other guy's name that was? I think he was on with Schock before, the geologist.
I forget.
Beard, heavyset fellow.
You think you can vamp for a second by yourself? Because these beers are getting to me.
Yeah, you go right ahead, man.
I'll be right back.
All right, so while Kyle's gone, you guys, I want to bring up the topic of shamanism. So I've said many times that I believe shamanism is the origin of all spirituality, of all religious traditions. Shamanism. I believe it comes from what the primitive human beings all across the globe believed, kind of a worldview that we've called animism. So this is some, I don't know where it originates. I first heard it from E.B. Tyler, like these early anthropologists from the 1800s. They're trying to categorize early religious, styles. And they said that the evidence that we get from modern hunter-gatherers, people that live, like in a Stone Age type of a way, people that we would call primitive, and even that is kind of like a derogatory word anymore, that those people all have a similar spiritual worldview. They believe that the world is interpenetrated by spirit, that spirit sort of, possesses the material world in various ways. And so, living creatures have spirits, and but rivers have spirits, and trees and mountains have spirits, and so forth. And you see this in ancient Japan and like Shinto religion. You see it in tribal religions from sub-Saharan Africa, from Australia, from the Native Americans, the Inuits up in the Arctic, that all of these primitive people believe that the world is imbued by spirits, and that it's possible to have some interaction with them. And that's what shamanism is. Shamanism is the practice of having influence over or communication with these spirits that possess the cosmos. That's something that Graham Hancock talked about in many of his books. I'm trying to think of.
Supernatural was the main one.
Yeah, supernatural. And this came up when I was reading the Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, because the Orthodox Father Rose,
He thinks it's all demons.
Yeah. Well, he was poo-pooing this idea that shamanism can be lumped in with paganism, and that it's some bastardization of the truth, that only, primitive societies could believe. Sophisticated civilizations could never buy into such a thing. Shamanism is like some bastardization of religion, and I think it's
I'm sorry, you said that his position is that like civilized society could never buy into that. That's like demonstrably not true. I mean,
yeah.
A lot of to be fair, a lot of shamanism is like Native Americans and people who didn't have the fucking wheel until we showed up,
Yeah.
But Rome was a pagan society.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't really mean what did I say? What word did I say? Civilized. I guess I meant modern. I guess I meant modern in that regard. But even the modern man, I think, can be introduced to shamanism in a real way. I think that even modern man can see shamanism in their own religion. You can see the practice of shamanism even in Christianity.
Especially the more mystic forms of Christianity.
Especially the more mystic forms.
I mean, what I was thinking when you were talking about that is that so you said that shamanism is in Friar Rose's, in his view, that shamanism is a corruption of the truth, which I've pretty much explicitly said that's what I believe too. I just think that idea, like, I don't know, it like holds some kind of water for me. And I think that the true shamans of the world are like Orthodox priests,
So even that, and I'm not saying I disagree with that, because I don't, but even that, the equivalency between the priest and the shaman, I think is legit.
Do you think that you can be misled by somebody who calls himself a shaman?
Sure. But I think if you're communing with the divine, that...
How do you know?
How do you know what you're communing with?
Yeah.
Well, so I think people that have, and listen, man, there's like a level of bias here that I have a hard time with, because I don't know what other people have experienced.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a common thread among people who've had mystical experiences, which is this, what Father Rose calls the cosmic experience. It's the one with the universe experience. It's realizing that the cosmos is one thing, and you are an extension of whatever that is. I lost my train of thought now, wherever I was going with this.
Son of a bitch.
Just that cosmic experience is it's an experience of unity. And that's where monotheism comes from, as far as I'm concerned. I'm convinced of it, that when you have the experience and you think to yourself, everything is one and everything is God, that's where monotheism comes from.
So you believe, like I believe, that the shamanistic idea that everything is literally one is a corruption of the truth. And you believe that the Christian idea that there is one God who created everything and that everything is not a part of him, you believe that is a corruption of the truth.
Say it again, the last part.
You believe that the Christian idea that there is one God.
Yep.
In three people, one God though.
Yep. But
we are separate from him. You believe that that is a corruption of the truth.
The separate part?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that monotheism comes from this unitive experience that's associated with mysticism and shamanism. All is one. There's only one thing. That thing is God. That's where monotheism comes from. I think the Trinity idea is interesting because it's tied into this I don't know if quest is the right word. This challenge of reconciling mystical experience with reality. It's like for a moment in ecstasy, I was one with the universe. Now I'm back in this situation where the universe seems to be a multiplicity of separate things. And this is the age-old philosophical question of the one and the many.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the Trinity is a reconciliation of that. I think the Trinity is people who've had this experience trying to bring logic in, put a structure on it that makes it comprehensible to them. And that's where the Trinity comes from.
Yeah. So I feel like we might be like zeroing in on like a little bit more of where we separate on these things, because I feel like it's the total opposite.
Yeah.
The Trinity is like the basic fact of existence. You know, like that is like the core truth of everything, that God is Trinitarian and that reality like echoes that in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And you believe like that, but like kind of flipped the other way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So a Christian, if you ask a Christian if they're polytheist or monotheist, they're going to tell you unequivocally that they're a monotheist.
Yep.
And this is what Jews and Muslims hate about it, because it's like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, according to them.
Yeah.
But you say, is God one or many? And a Christian will say many. You say, wait a minute. Exactly. One.
He transcends.
One and many. Yes.
God has to transcend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know you believe that. I'm just like, for the Muslims and the Jews, it's like, if God doesn't transcend that problem, it's not God. It's something that is lying to you, telling you that it's God.
There's also this thing about being apart from God that's very like, what's the word? It seems very wrong to me intuitively. It's like I'm a creature outside of God. Mm. Boy, man, that just doesn't ring true at all to me. I think it's important. And again, this comes from the unitive experience I was talking about. This is where my intuition comes from. I feel like that my mystical experience flipped a switch on my intuition. Mm. Like maybe I used to have it when I was little and I totally buried it down and put all my junk drawer items on top of it. And I,
there's a tape measure,
pushed it into the closet, threw a rug over top of it. Yeah. Turned the light out. When I had that mystical experience, it was like somebody flipped the switch on my intuition. And now I have this sense that I didn't used to have, or I didn't used to notice, that tells me when I'm thinking along the wrong lines, or when something is not precise. It doesn't tell me this is true. It tells me, like, it's like a game of what do they call that? Where you're trying to fuck the kids game, where you're trying to find something that it's like, you're getting hotter, you're getting colder. Yeah, whatever the name for that. Yeah, I have that sense now, and that's what I understand as intuition. It tells me it's like hotter, 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 hotter. You're flaming, right?
Yeah. I appreciate that to some extent. I feel that myself to some extent. But how do you... There are people who would be following the exact same thing who would come to drastically different conclusions than you do. So what do you base your ideas on that says that these are right while those people are wrong?
I mean, we'd have to probably get a specific example of something to talk about there. But what I would suggest is, and this goes back to something we talked about before, that, boy, drinking beer makes you want to burp, doesn't it?
You more than me, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. Most traditional religious people, hold on. There's a lot of gas in the, anyway, the most traditional religious people, where was I going with this? They believe that faith is a critical component to spiritual belief. Mm-hmm. Some things you can't prove, you have to believe anyway, and we call that faith. I guess maybe that's one way of understanding it. Mm-hmm. I feel like I had an experience that removed that necessity. I no longer need faith to believe something, because I was the thing that I'm after. I became God. So I have an understanding of identity. Like I was there, man. So, so if I'm talking to somebody who's never been there, who's using logic and theology only, there's a part of me that thinks, I know something you don't know. There's a part, I don't know, maybe
there's a part of me that says, you think you know something I don't know, but how do you know you're not being deluded? You know, like, how do you know that? Look, I fully believe that when you take mushrooms or take acid or, you know, hit the DMT pen, that you are communing with spiritual entities. I fully believe that.
Yep.
And that kind of ties into the thing with the Tucker Carlson episode that I wanted to talk about, but I don't know if we're going to have time. But I fully believe that you're communing with spiritual entities. But unlike you, I believe you believe that those spiritual entities are God. And I believe that those spiritual entities were created by God, but they are separate from him and have free will, and not all of them are benevolent. That they have a vested interest in pointing people in the wrong directions.
So there was a time when I would want to disagree with you. Right now, I don't think I can disagree with you as much, because I think that when you say that there's you're encountering spiritual entities in an altered state of consciousness, and I would say that those entities are God, I agree with you. But they might, but you say no, that they're actually separate from God. That I used to want to push back on that, and I still do. But I also understand that even myself, that I believe I am God and also apart from God. And so there's some truth, there's some paradoxical thing there, but there's some truth in that. Now, I cannot say that that couldn't be true. This goes back to the same conversation we had about whether angels and demons could possibly exist. I can't rule that out, even though my intuition saying, you know, you're hotter, you're colder, tends to say you're colder when I start talking about this kind of thing. I don't really believe in demons, man. I don't, and as much as I want to believe in angels, I don't really believe in them either. But I can't rule out the fact that they exist, because how they are meant to exist is exactly how I understand myself to exist, as something that is simultaneously God and not God. Is it possible there are other things, and the things in the material world are the only things like that? Is it possible there are others? I guess so. I guess so. Even when you say some of those entities might not have your best interest in heart, or might even be evil, I can't even really disagree with that in principle. And the reason is because I think when this unitive understanding of God requires that nothing is left out of the umbrella of God. And this gets difficult. But what I mean to say is that I can't say that if the devil exists, that the devil isn't also God, right? Or if evil exists, that it's somehow something that happens outside of God. And there are some even Christian theologians that will argue this, that will make the argument that demons and devils in the Christian perspective are out there. Well, maybe the way to put this that makes the most sense is that they're torturing the souls of the wicked. And then when you realize that a spiritual being torturing the souls of the wicked is actually a servant of God, right? Right? It's like if you sin and you've done wrong to God, and the consequence of that is that you must be punished. The entities that are doing the punishing, that are purifying the spirit, as torturous as that might be for you as an individual, those are the workers of God, right? The demons torturing you in hell for your sins are doing the work of God. There's even that more traditional explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think that when I think of hell, I don't necessarily think of the fiery pit. I don't necessarily think of human beings being tortured by demons in hell. When I think of demons, I think of spiritual entities here in the world that are not not the type of entities that we accept on a material basis, you know, but that do have their own free will and are trying to push you into whatever hell is. You know, like I said, I don't see it as the fiery pit necessarily, but whatever it is, these demons have free will the same way that you and I do, and they are trying to push you to whatever hell is.
Do you think that that kind of thing is like, do you think it's like a challenge to see if you're worthy of heaven? Like, can you imagine that in a way that's like similar to the way I was describing demons being the soldiers of God in that sense? It's like if a soul isn't tested, if you're never given an opportunity to sin, are you really good? Are you really pure? Like, do you need to have the...
It's very Petersonian.
Yeah. Do you need to have the challenge? Do you need to be tempted? Do you need to prove that you can rise to the occasion? And before you're welcomed into this spirit to rejoin the spirit that we call God, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I think that we were designed with the free will, and we had the opportunity to not have that have happened, but we used our free will to put ourselves in that situation where we do have to overcome temptation, you know? And that eventually, you know, through the process of like you know about theosis, in the Protestant theology, there's like this doctrine called sanctification, you know, where through, you know, partaking in the sacrament, the various sacraments, and attempting not to sin, you sanctify yourself. You become more and more and more pure in your journeys, would say, with God, or that closer proximity to God,
something like that.
But I think that even if the Protestants are, you know, they have like some disconnect from like the Orthodox notion of theosis, I feel like they are trying to describe the same thing, you know?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that there's something to that, you know?
Yeah. So this is something I said in the last solo episode I did where I brought, maybe it was the Seraphim Rose book, where I was talking about all these words in the Christian, I think primarily from Orthodoxy, but in the Christian dogma. And theosis is one. And theosis means, literally interpreted, to become God. That's what theosis means. But then there's chrismation. This is another word I ran into from the Orthodox lingo. Chrismation is confirmation. It just means the same thing the Catholics mean when they say confirmation.
Yeah.
But confirmation means to be anointed into the church.
Mm-hmm.
So you're grafted into, you become a member of the church. And I don't know if the Orthodox do, but I imagine they do. They have that.
Chrismate?
No.
Go ahead.
They have an understanding of this like the Catholics, I assume. You tell me if I'm wrong, if you know. But the idea is that when you become, when you're confirmed and you become a member of the church, you become a part of the body of Christ.
Yeah, the church is the body of Christ.
The church is the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And you've been grafted into it. You become one with the body of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not dissimilar from another religious word, Christian word that we all know well, atonement. And I've heard criticism of this, but atonement breaks down to at-one-ment. And I've heard criticisms, maybe there's a different word origin of it, but it seems pretty clear that atonement means at-one-ment, being at one with God, the same as theosis means to become God. And chrismation means to become a part of the church where you are one with the body of Christ. I don't know how different that is from saying theosis or at-one-ment. It seems to me like there's this poorly, maybe this is going to sound bad, and it's going to sound arrogant, and I'll just tell you what I'm thinking.
Luciferian, maybe?
No, it's almost like you have all of this in the tradition, especially the Orthodox tradition, that's telling you you can become one with God, or that you are one with God, and you have to realize that through some religious exercise. And yet they pretend that that isn't the case. And then they have conversations about the energies of God and the essence of God and all this stuff. It's like they're bending over backwards to not see what's very evident there, that there's something about the religion that's telling you the goal of it is to become one with God in some way, shape, or form. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah. What do you think about all that?
So I think, I'm not Orthodox and I'm not a theologian by any stretch of the means. But I do know that when you go through the catechism for the Orthodox, this is just stuff that I know from having talked to Orthodox people and read Orthodox things, that, sometimes you get baptized in, but if you've been baptized in the past, sometimes, they are not, like, they think that original baptism still stands and you'll just be chrismated. You'll get the oil and, you'll be anointed into the church. And I think that chrismation is not theosis.
Yeah.
That chrismation is like maybe the first step in theosis, and you still have a long way to go. I kind of view like what a saint is a person who has achieved theosis,
Yeah.
like they have like fully achieved the most closeness to God that you possibly can. And I consider myself to be a member of the body of Christ. I'm a part of the church, but I have not attained theosis. And it seems like in your kind of ideology, it's like as soon as you realize that you're a part of God, you are. And I don't believe that. I believe that you got to do work.
Yeah. So let me clarify that. I don't disagree with you that you have to do work. I think that it's incumbent upon you, when you have that experience, to do a great deal of work.
Yeah.
And
faith without works is dead.
Absolutely. It has something to do with taking an experience and making it a part of you. That's another Petersonian thing. It's one thing to have an experience. An experience can be enlightening.
Yeah. And then you don't act on it at all.
Right.
And it was just some bullshit. Like, it's like masturbatory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think there are people, and maybe that's the greatest sin ever. Maybe that's a sin against the Holy Spirit right there. People who have had that experience and never follow it up, who never act on it, who it doesn't inspire any discipline or exploration or anything else, fascination. It was something that you experienced one time, and then it becomes one of countless other experiences that are menial and profane. To have an experience of being God, to realize that you are a part of it. Hey, you're part of it.
Yeah. What's that band?
Oh, what is that?
Piebald.
Yes. Yeah. To have that experience and turn your back on it, buddy, that seems like an unforgivable sin to me,
Yeah.
But I do think it requires work. It requires work to understand it. It requires work to integrate it. And I can't help, and I've said this before, but I can't help but think the saints, like you just talked about, like Mother Teresa as an example. This is something I've talked about before. I think that Mother Teresa could not have acted the way she did if she did not, in her heart, believe that she was the incarnation of God and all on earth, and all of the poor and the sick and the destitute people that she was ministering to were herself. She looked at them and she saw God.
Yeah.
And her actions were of self-sacrifice and love.
Yeah.
And I don't think that happens unless you come to this realization that I am you. The reason I have to love you is the only reason that matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of identity. And it's not any identity. It's the Most High. It's the thing that deserves worship. It's like, imagine seeing everybody in your life, everybody in the world all the time as something like that.
Yeah.
Worthy of worship,
Yeah. I mean, there was a time where I would have gone right down that road with you, like completely. But now I think that what Mother Teresa, and I suspect that if we could talk to Mother Teresa, or if we could talk to, like, if we could manage to get somebody like Father Josiah Trenum on, he would say something to the effect of, like, the motivation of what you're talking about is close, but the reality is that we are not God. We are God's creation, and we are all equal in the fact that we are God's creation.
Yeah.
But like, we create these podcasts, but we are not these podcasts, I think there's something to that.
True. And I don't disagree. And I would also just say that the podcasts couldn't exist without us. We're integrally linked to the thing.
I completely agree with that.
And I think there's something like that, integrally linked with the Godhead. Creation is not, so like maybe it's like weird and like a philosophical distinction, or like a distinction of model, like a logical model in my head. But when we talk about separation, being separate from, when I say integrally part of, I imagine a connection. I imagine an umbilical cord between God and creation. We're not separate. We're connected. We're one thing somehow.
That silver
separate
cord.
And different. The silver cord, man. We're bringing it full circle. Yeah.
Daniel Torridon, shout out.
Shout out to Daniel Torridon. Getting married here in, what is it, October, I think?
I feel like we are kind of like, we're getting closer to maybe being in the same ballpark again.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think the more we talk about it, the closer we'll get. And the most interesting shit to me is when we get to the real crux of where we disagree, and then we just hear each other talk about what we think that means, because it helps, man. And that's the conversation that I want to have with others. I want to have that conversation with others.
Yeah, man.
It's like, where do we disagree? And let's get to the bottom of why. And I just think that shit is interesting, man.
Yeah. I know we're not going to have much time to talk about it because we're approaching our time limit generally.
Yeah.
But Joe Rogan had Tucker Carlson on, and they talked about, the first thing that they opened up talking about was kind of aliens, you know?
Yeah.
And just so everyone knows, in case you haven't like listened to the past episodes, we say Friar Rose, and I mean no disrespect by that.
No.
And I know that Chris didn't mean any disrespect by it either. At this point, it's like an inside joke. It's like a two tongues inside joke. Father Seraphim Rose.
Yes.
His position on that kind of thing is that aliens are spiritual entities. And, he kind of, in your episode, part of the problem you had with it is that he's like chalking it all up to them being demons.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would say that they're all demons. I think that a person could potentially have an interaction, like a non-religious person could have an interaction with an angel and believe that it was an alien. Like, you think about some of the descriptions of angels in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's not all winged people with long hair and robes. And sometimes it's like weird things with 1,000 eyes.
Sure is. Yeah. Something from Futurama.
In that podcast, Tucker Carlson brought up in the book of Ezekiel talks about a wheel in the sky, like a wheel within a wheel.
Yeah.
And he's like, that sounds a lot like a UFO, and Tucker's position. And I like I said, I don't necessarily think that they're all demons. I think that a lot of them are, but I don't think that they're all demons, but I'm more bought into the idea that they're spiritual entities as opposed to beings from farther out in the universe who are more advanced than us. And I couldn't help but think that Rogan came off as naive and also like very materialistic and very like scientific, in his thinking.
Yeah.
He's like, basically at one point he's talking about aliens and he's like, I don't really think that they would care about who the president is or who the leaders are. They're just going to look at us as like these primitive hairless monkeys. And that is like so obviously informed by a notion of like secular evolution, like we're just hairless monkeys.
Yeah.
And I don't, the part where Tucker and me separate from Joe is I don't believe that. I believe that we were specifically created by God as we are. And Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something special about us to me.
Absolutely.
Whereas Joe doesn't seem to think that there's anything special about us. You know, he just thinks that we're another link in the evolutionary chain.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea that when people talk about the cosmos, like nature, I don't know what word you want to use, but when people talk about that, and what we really mean by that is something like time, space, energy, and the laws of physics. That's what we mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, even without all the things in it, like before all of this, those things existed: time, space, energy, and the laws that govern them. And if we and let's just imagine for a second that that is God. Like, let's package it all together and say whatever this is, it's not different things. Matter, energy, time, those aren't different things. They're actually one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what that cosmos did, what it does, is it turns into us. The cosmos evolves. The laws that govern the cosmos, the laws that we say define what the cosmos is, play out. And the end result of that is conscious human beings. Starts off with stars and other things, and it becomes, down the line, far enough, conscious human beings. That blows my fucking mind every single time. The universe unfolded into us. It's almost like it couldn't have happened any other way. The unfolding of nature follows the laws of nature, and what the result of that is inevitable, seems to me. It unfolds, and at the end of that process, where we're sitting right now, it's beings who, like you and I, can look up and experience the universe that we are.
Yeah.
The self-aware universe. That's how I see God.
Mm-hmm. Solo episode, Chris solo episode. Go check it. The self-aware. It's a good one.
Oh, you like that one?
Yeah, yeah, and it's done well too. You know.
Oh, hot damn, as my grandpa would say.
Hot damn.
All right.
Yeah, no, I think that like a spec like here. Gee, man. You got Rogan over here who is very like materialist and what I believe to be naive in terms of thinking about there being like a spiritual element to existence, you know, which for a guy who's done as many psychedelics as Joe has, it's like, come on, Joe.
Yeah, come on.
And then there's me, who's like a fundamentalist religious person over on the other. And you're like, I would say that you're like closer to me than you are to Rogan, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I couldn't help in that. I haven't watched all of that episode either, but I couldn't help but think that Rogan came off as very naive in a bunch of ways in that episode. Like at one point they were talking about AI, and like pretty much everyone who thinks about AI thinks that it's like in the long run probably not going to be good for humanity. And like at one point there, you got all these like progressive liberal people who are saying climate change, you know, you can't have a wood stove, you can't have a gas stove, we're killing the world. But then Tucker brings up the fact that AI, which these people are all, you know, fully on board for, right, is like going to be the biggest drain on our power grid. And they just like pass a blind eye over to that. And Rogan says, yeah, but I wonder if they know. I wonder if they're aware of that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, Joe? Like, these people are smart people. They're not, you know, I believe that they are fully aware that AI is going to be a huge drain on the power grid. They just don't care. They don't care about that because it like lines up with their, you know, their presuppositions and the ends that they're trying to get to. And Rogan, I mean, I just have a hard time believing that Joe can be that naive.
So it's funny you say that because I kind of am that naive. I think that you're right. The people who are in that world, they aren't that naive. They know, but it never occurred to me until you brought it up just now that the existence of AI and that the proliferation of AI will become it will require energy that we aren't producing now. Like it's going to become a significant part. Like I never even considered it. So is it possible that some people didn't consider it?
Oh, I think
probably.
I'm with you. I think that that's true. I think the vast majority of people are not thinking about that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I do think that these people who are developing AI, they know, you know, and Joe's idea that maybe they just aren't aware. It's like such a crock of shit, man. And that kind of stuff, I can't help but think that either Joe is completely naive or that he is like carrying water for these people, you know?
Yeah. It's not the first time you've said the carrying water thing about Joe. But I don't know. I think he might be kind of naive.
Yeah, no, it could go either way. I'm not sure what to think. A lot of people, I was talking.
The fact that Joe, he's had like lots of really interesting scientists on the podcast, philosophers of mind and neuroscientists. Joe still doesn't understand that there's a difference between mind and brain.
Yeah.
It completely goes over his head over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's like he's Sam Harris all of a sudden.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think a bunch of people are like really bought into, and this kind of ties back into the Graham Hancock thing. A bunch of people are tied into believing that everything is a conspiracy theory and that Joe Rogan's a CIA asset and Tucker Carlson's a CIA asset. And I mean, there's interesting points to be made for that kind of stuff. Tucker Carlson's dad was a CIA guy, and a lot of people who drive culture have like weird ties to the CIA and like different intelligence agencies. So there's interesting stuff to be made about, points to be made about that. But I don't know, man. I just try not to chalk everything up to that at this point. Like I want to be open to that sort of thing because I do believe, I don't think it's arguable that things like that do happen, but I think a lot of people just like write everything off as that sort of thing. And I just don't think that that's a good idea.
I think that's a part of the thing we started talking about at the beginning. I think that's part of the zeitgeist right now. I think that everything's a conspiracy. I think that's somehow integrally part of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I don't know what that means, but we're 16 minutes, 34 seconds over our time. So what do you want to do, man? What do you want to say?
We're good. I mean, just, again, hit that like button, subscribe, hit us up in the comments. Let us know about things you want us to talk about. We would be happy to, if enough people said, hey, talk about this. Fuck, man. If one person said, hey, would you guys look into this? We would be happy to talk about it.
Totally.
Let us know. Reach out.
Yep. And I'll tell you that the next episode that I have coming out, I'm actually pretty excited about.
Move all this shit
based on this book, right? Where am I? Here we go. Here, right here. It's Legends and Popular Tales of the Basque People, which was a book written in the 1800s by a lady named Mariana Monteiro. So one of the things we talked about a lot on this podcast is the Proto-Indo-European people and the ancient history involved with the line of descent of most of modern European people. But there is a linguistic groups, few and far between in Europe that aren't Indo-European. Yeah. One of those groups are called the Basque people. They live up in the mountains in the area like around near Spain and France. And what I wanted to do was read some of the myths of the Basque people because they're not related to the Proto-Indo-Europeans, and try to get some understanding of how they compare and contrast with the rest of the European culture. So that's coming. Look forward to that. It's actually an interesting story I'm going to start with. It's something like the fairy tales that we hear about from like Grimm's Brothers or Hans Christian Andersen, but it's a Basque version, and it's really interesting, man. So I'm bringing that next.
A lot of those European cultures that are not tied to the Proto-Indo-European, basically how they know that is that the language is not Proto-Indo-European.
Right.
I would like to know how much of like the genetics are still Proto-Indo-European, but maybe through like conquering and things like that, they picked up different languages. Like, because I know another group of those people, I think Estonia, I think it's Finland.
Yeah.
Maybe Estonia too.
Yeah.
Because they're very close in proximity. And Hungary as well. That's like a Turco Urgic language. It's not a
Really? Hungarian.
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm curious to know, like, does the genetics of a person from Hungary line up with a person from Germany, but it's just a different language?
Yeah.
I have no idea. That would be interesting to find out.
Well, that's one of those suggestions that we'll roll with
in a future episode.
All right, you guys.
Of the Two Tongues Podcast. Adios, amigos. Well,